Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act, but also in terms of international standards on anti-money laundering and CFT, counter-financing of terrorism. You will forgive me, I will now use acronyms. I've already told you what they mean. Understanding where our greatest money laundering risks lie enables the country, both at national policy level and at the institutional level, to come up with appropriate measures and responses to mitigate the risks. Most importantly, risk-based approach to combating money laundering and other financial crimes also enables countries and institutions to prioritize limited resources to areas of greatest need and impact. Zimbabwe's third money laundering national risk assessment could not have come at a more opportune time, as the country prepares for the next round of regional assessments on compliance with the FATF 40 recommendations due in 2026, which is just next year. We should all use the risk assessment process and today's launch as an opportunity for the country to renew and refocus efforts to combat money laundering and financial crimes. Although the country assessment is already around the corner, let us use the precious time between now and the assessments to redouble efforts in our respective areas of responsibility to give the country a chance for the best rating possible. Under the previous round of country evaluations, Zimbabwe, along with many other countries in the region, ended up being placed on FATF's grey list. Now I have to remember, when were we removed from the grey list? In 2022. So I want the nation to know that we are currently not on the grey list. Honorable Minister, we want to fight as much as we can to make sure we are not going back on that list. It's no mean task, but we managed to achieve it. So let's fight to make sure we don't go back on that list. The Money Laundering National Risk Assessment Report and AML CFT strategy for 2025 to 2029 also comes at a time when the country is working on launching the NDS-2, the National Development Strategy. Effectively combating money laundering and mitigation illicit financial flows helps mitigate and eliminate arbitrage and economic inefficiencies, and ultimately contributes to economic development in line with Vision 2030 of becoming an upper middle class economy by that date. Therefore, this exercise is key for this economy to move ahead. Honorable Minister, the Central Bank, for its part, remains fully committed to playing its part in safeguarding the integrity of the financial system through risk-based AML CFT supervision and robust enforcement of compliance by its supervised institutions. The Central Bank doesn't do this for its own benefit. It does this for the benefit of our economy and ultimately for the benefit of each and every Zimbabwean. So the task of the Reserve Bank is to make sure that we comply, as this is not only good for individuals, but for all our institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you all and thank you for being here this morning. Datenda, ngiyabonga. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. At this point, I'm going to call back Doc back to the podium to introduce our guest of honor for today.
Madam, you should have just let me stay on the podium. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my singular honor to introduce our very own Deputy Minister of Finance, Economic Development, and Investment Promotion. I think a lot of you have heard and seen him in different fora, wearing different hats. But let me emphasize that Kudakwashe Mnangagwa is an accomplished businessman. The tenets of what makes a good business case. Somebody talked about money. I wanted to say good business case are not lost to this gentleman. So the idea that he is an honorable MP and deputy minister is not only the point of reference this morning, but his experience and his commitment to the development of this country makes him stand out as one of the key members of our government that we all revere and look up to give us policy directions and to oversee the development of our country. So I am honored to introduce him to you this morning. As a champion for the tenets of good governance and policy decision making that can take this country forward. So thank you very much. Please welcome our Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Governor and our Events Director, and for softening the ground as well. You know, when you've got a room full of regulators, getting a simple good morning is a very tough task. So I'm happy to see the room lit up, and you will find out that we have something to smile about for the regulators in this room. But allow me to start off by recognizing the heads of government institutions here present. I've got the Deputy Governor, the DG of FIU, we've got captains of industry and professional associations that are here present. We've got the chairman of the task force, we've got members of the academia, members of the press, colleagues. A very good morning to you all. I don't know, I might just take that back. Maybe we need, what is it, TT time? ITT time. I think it should be coffee time. But it is my honor, and on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Professor Mthuli Ncube, to welcome you all to the official launch of Zimbabwe's third Money Laundering National Risk Assessment. As you will recall, in 2014, Zimbabwe completed a money laundering national risk assessment in line with the new guidelines introduced by the FATF in 2012. Deputy Governor already alluded to all the acronyms, so I think I'm at liberty to use them. FATF. Becoming the third country in Africa after Ghana and Malawi to complete a national risk assessment. So we're the third country in Africa. That is something I think we can applaud ourselves for as Zimbabwe. Now, I also note with pride that to date, Zimbabwe is among only a handful of countries in Africa to have successfully completed a third cycle of a money laundering and terrorism financing national risk assessment, which we're launching today. Furthermore, Zimbabwe has always been at the forefront in the region in terms of aligning its anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism framework to international standards, whilst ensuring that efforts to combat financial crimes support the country's developmental goals. In this regard, as you may be aware, Zimbabwe is currently rated as largely compliant or fully compliant in 37 out of the FATF's 40 recommendations on AML and CFT, a rating that puts the country's AML CFT legal and institutional framework among the best, not only in the region, but globally. So we are ranking not only in the region, but globally. I think that is another reason to applaud ourselves. Now, whilst this marks a commendable milestone, it is, however, important to recognize that putting in place a robust national legal and institutional framework is not adequate. Effective implementation of these laws is key to tackle money laundering and related financial crimes. A lot of work thus remains incomplete. Hence, I urge all stakeholders across the entire anti-money laundering value chain, from policymakers, regulatory bodies, law enforcement agencies, the FIU, and the private sector, including financial institutions and designated businesses and professions, to work tirelessly to ensure the laws are effectively implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be aware that starting from June 2026, Zimbabwe will undergo assessment under the Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group, ISMALAG, third round of mutual evaluations. This latest round of assessments will focus less on adequacy of country's legal and institutional framework and more on effectiveness in terms of implementation of anti-money laundering measures. So we are ranking 37 out of 40 in terms of compliance. We'll know what the next round of assessments will be assessing us over. So I would hope in the next year, up until June next year, we are focusing on the implementation of these measures. I think we had a brief discussion around some of these issues. It would appear that the team is up to task. I would hope everyone in this room is up to task as well. But there are various areas that we need to strengthen as a country ahead of the assessment, and these are not limited to strengthening the risk-based supervision of financial institutions and designated businesses and professions, strengthening the capacity of law enforcement agencies to detect, investigate, and prosecute financial crimes and confiscating illicitly acquired wealth, and regulating the use of virtual assets and the operations of virtual asset service providers. Now, I'm pleased to note that work is already underway with the various agencies to address some of these areas of weakness. I further note that as part of the national risk assessment process, an exercise was undertaken to identify and assess the money laundering and terrorism financing risks posed by the use of virtual assets. A risk assessment is a necessary prerequisite for effective regulation of virtual assets. As government, we'll carefully consider recommendations in the report with a view to taking them on board. I'm also aware of the other various initiatives that are being undertaken by our law enforcement agencies to enhance their capacity to investigate and prosecute financial crimes. I applaud the multi-agency initiatives currently underway to develop a training curriculum for financial crime investigators and prosecutors. I'm convinced this will go a long way in strengthening our ability as a country to effectively combat financial crimes. Ladies and gentlemen, regular risk assessments at national, sectoral, and institutional levels are always the best way of identifying and understanding the country's exposure to money laundering and terrorism, financing threats and vulnerabilities. I'm pleased that the just concluded National Risk Assessment does just that. I'm also pleased to note that the National Task Force on AML and CFT has gone a step further to come up with the 5-year National AML CFT strategy for 2025 to 2029, which sets out concrete actions that the different stakeholders in the AML CFT value chain are expected to implement to strengthen the national efforts against financial crimes. Now, one of the notable findings in the NRA report relates to the level of informalization of our economy, wherein a proportion of the transactions, or a significant proportion of the transactions, are being concluded in cash, outside of the formal financial system, and thus beyond the line of sight of the FIU, ZIMRA, and other law enforcement agencies. Let me assure all stakeholders that our ministry, in collaboration with the government institutions, is committed to implementing policies that encourage more businesses to formalize, reduce, and untimely eliminate the shadow economy. The National Development Strategy 2 will set out key policies that will move the country along this path. And as we get to the NDS2 launch, you will see a few announcements and policy refinements that ensure that there's an ease of doing business and will allow for more formalization of the informal. Now, before I conclude, I wish to commend the National Task Force on AML CFT under the coordination of the FIU for coming up with the comprehensive NRA report and the National AML CFT strategy for 2025 to 2029. I also wish to acknowledge the contributions of all the agencies that participated and contributed to this NRA process, from both the public and the private sectors, civil society and academia, among others. The level of cooperation and coordination that characterized the national risk assessment process bodes well for the country's future efforts to strengthen the fight against money laundering and related illicit activities. I challenge all stakeholders across the AML CFT value chain to take on board the findings and recommendations of the NRA report. I also encourage you to play your respective parts to ensure that as a country, we are fully prepared for the upcoming assessment of ESMALAG. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to end by extending a heartfelt gratitude to the World Bank, which has supported Zimbabwe's money laundering and terrorism finance risk assessments from the first assessment in 2014 up to the latest one. The World Bank provided Zimbabwe with a national risk assessment tool and methodology, as well as technical support, ensuring that the assessment was robust and met the highest international standards. I'm sure that the World Bank will continue to partner with us as we strive to continuously strengthen our AML CFT framework. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure and honor to declare Zimbabwe's third money laundering risk assessment report and national AML CFT strategy for 2025 to 2029 officially launched. I thank you. Tatenda Siyabonga.
Another round of applause for the Deputy Minister for delivering a straightforward speech. I even understood that one. That one I understood. And also the acronyms that were being said, I was like, yes, thank God.
My apologies, Events Director. Officially launched.
Oh. Let's make sure we capture that. Okay, just wait for the photographers. The photographers are coming through so you can officially launch it.
For the third time, officially launched.
You should know I actually have a copy of that, so I was studying all night. I was like, no, at this rate, give me an exam. I'll be a banker by the end of today. Ladies and gentlemen, remember the acronym I said I was going to really be excited to say? Well, it's that time. Ladies and gentlemen, ITT or ICT? Yeah, because it figures like you guys need some coffee in your system. At this point, we're going to allow our delegation to take leave. They are going for a photo op to officially open for the fourth time. And then when we come back, it will be exactly 10:30. Please do make sure that we come back into this room for the second part of today's event. So please, 10:30, we do come back into this room, but for our delegation, our VIPs and the NAMLAC committee members, please do exit the room. There will be ushers who will direct you as to where the photo op is happening. For now, enjoy your tea time. When we come back, we continue with the second part. Thank you. Proceeding with the second part of our program. And in this second part, we're going to hear from the Financial Intelligence Unit. This is the moment where I wish I had some giveaways or something to give you guys, because I wanted to test your acronym knowledge. I was just going to be throwing some acronyms, and then if you figure it out, something will be given, but, I don't have anything. Saga, we're just going to go ahead with the rest of the program, but I really wanted to just test the knowledge. Do you guys really know all these acronyms? It's a real question. Do you guys really know all these acronyms? and you use them on your everyday, like, motomuka kubasa, mshoti FCT, CFT, ML, TFT, or whatever. Mushtonzwana kuti this is what you're saying? Aiwa makapenga, salute. I top my hat to you. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome for the next presentation, key findings of the National Risk Assessment from the Financial Intelligence Unit Secretariat, Mrs. Clara Wata, on money laundering, and she's also going to present on terrorism financing. So she's got 2 presentations to give you. Please, let's give her a round of applause as she comes forward for these presentations. So you will clap until she gets to the podium. Thank you. Almost there, almost there.
Thank you.
Pleasure, ma'am.
Okay, I will use the one. Thank you, MC. So maybe you can wait for a minute just to settle down. Okay, so I will start with the results for the, thank you. The results for the money laundering risk assessment. And for this, maybe we'll take about 30 minutes or so. Okay. So I'll start with the introduction, where we are saying in terms of Section 12A of the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act, the FIU is mandated to coordinate the carrying out of the money laundering and terrorist financing risk assessment. The FIU coordinates the carrying out of the risk assessment through the National Task Force on AML CFT, which it chairs. At its meeting in October 2023, the National Task Force resolved to carry out the 3rd National Risk Assessment. So the need to carry out a risk assessment is not only according to AML CFT laws in Zimbabwe, but it is also required by the FATF recommendations. So both Section 12 of the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act and FATF recommendations emphasize the need for regular review of risk assessments to ensure they remain current, relevant in the face of evolving risks. Following the first and second NRA in 2015 and 2019 respectively, Zimbabwe carried out its 3rd NRA from November 2023 to November 2024, which culminated into the National Risk Assessment Report of 2024 and the AML CFT strategy for 2025 to 2029. Can I pause that? This one is not working. So we'll go on to the purpose of the NRA. The NRA allows a country to identify, assess, and understand its money laundering risks. It also allows the countries to put in place mitigation measures to manage the identified risks. It also allows the countries to formulate policies and strategies, including legal frameworks, to mitigate the risks. And using those strategies, then to apply the risk-based approach in carrying out all AML-related activities. Just to summarize, I think this was also covered by the Minister and Deputy Governor. why we were carrying out the risk assessments and the processes. So to undertake the risk assessment, Zimbabwe received technical assistance from the World Bank, and the World Bank provided the assessment tool, training, and reviewed our preliminary reports. And the risk assessment, now coming to the risk assessment, it covered 11 modules or thematic areas. And these include the national money laundering threat, then the national vulnerability, and the third one was the vulnerability of the banking sector, insurance sector, securities sector. Then we had a module on other financial institutions, which covered about four sectors, which include money transfer agencies, microfinance institutions, mobile money operators, and bureau de change. Then our seventh module included designated non-financial businesses and professions, and these had 7 sectors: accountants, casinos, car dealers, lawyers, dealers in precious stones and precious metals, real estate agents, and trusts, company service providers. In addition to these 7, there were 4 thematic areas which were also carried out, risk assessments which have standalone reports, and these include environmental crimes and natural resources, legal persons and legal arrangements, vehicle assets and vehicle asset service providers, then tax crimes. So participants, I think most of us were part of this assessment, most of us in this room. So participants were drawn from government, academia, private and public sectors, and their diverse backgrounds ensured a thorough and well-rounded assessment of the risks. Further engagements were also done with consultants, and for the VASP working group, they engaged a US consultant firm. So now coming to the money laundering risk. In short, if we are talking of risk, I just have one slide to define some terms so that we understand where we are coming from and what we want to achieve. So money laundering risk is defined as a combination of vulnerability and threat. And risk in money laundering refers to the likelihood that illegal funds will be processed through a system or a business or a financial institution without being detected. Then the vulnerability refers to weaknesses or gaps in the country's defense system that can be exploited by criminals to undertake illicit activities. Examples include lack of comprehensive legal framework, ineffective supervision, or weak border controls. Then the threat is defined as the potential that financial institutions or DNFBPs or other services will be used to facilitate laundering, usually measured by cases recorded in the sector or known typologies or experiences recorded. Now we come to the results of the risk assessment. Zimbabwe's money laundering risk assessment was rated medium. And it's a scale of low to high. And we used that matrix there, and our risk is on medium and indicated in the chart there. So overall risk for Zimbabwe was rated medium, which is a combination of medium low threat and medium high vulnerability. So we come to the detailed findings. And these are done as per module, as we discussed earlier. So our first module, which is on threat, was rated medium low. Zimbabwe's threat rating improved from medium to medium low since 2019. This improvement was due to enhanced competent authorities, that is our law enforcement, our supervisors, capabilities to combat money laundering. And some of these key activities included: one, the establishment of dedicated units within law enforcement agencies to investigate cases of money laundering and other financial crime, resulting in more cases of money laundering and predicate offenses being investigated. Then the establishment of forfeiture units to ensure tainted proceeds of crime are confiscated and forfeited to the state. This also resulted in some cases, some crime assets being forfeited. Then there was enhanced implementation of the risk-based approach, measures by competent authorities to prevent sectors from being used as conduits for money laundering. This is except for the car dealers sector, where AML controls are yet to be deployed. Then awareness programs were being launched and are still continuing to be held across all sectors and stakeholders to improve understanding. So these issues helped strengthen our threat, reduce the threat of money laundering to our country. Then in terms of the threat, there are key predicate offenses that were identified during the assessment. So in total, the assessment identified 16 predicate offenses to money laundering. However, among those, only 6 predicate offenses contributed significantly to money laundering. And these include smuggling, illegal dealing in gold and precious stones, corruption, tax evasion, fraud, and drug trafficking. And in terms of these proceeds, the total proceeds from the 16 offenses was about 1.23 billion annually, which equates to 3.4% of Zimbabwe's 2023 GDP, which was at 35.2. And common sectors where the laundered funds were channeled to included mainly our car dealers and the real estate sector. We move on to our vulnerability module, which was rated medium high. Zimbabwe's vulnerability to money laundering was rated medium high, an increase from medium that was recorded in our 2019 assessment. And this was derived from a combination of the national combating ability and the overall sectorial vulnerability. There was increased overall sectoral vulnerability from the previous ratings of medium to medium high at 0.75. Highly vulnerable sectors included our car dealers, our real estate, and dealers in precious stones, and also the banking sector. So in terms of the key factors that influence the national vulnerability, we had the low formalization of the economy. I think this was touched earlier on. Low formalization of the economy resulted in lack of proper structures to implement anti-money laundering and CFT measures effectively. This makes it harder to regulate and monitor financial activities. Business evade registration and monitoring, leading to a greater risk of illicit transactions being processed. Then another key issue is the effectiveness of customs control and cash and similar instruments. The anonymous nature of cash. Cash is difficult to track, making it a prime vehicle for money laundering. The reliance on cash transactions, especially in foreign currency, increased the risk of smuggling. Then border controls on cash were considered a bit weak, with over 90% of transactions occurring in cash and mainly in US dollars. This trend aggravates exposure in sectors like the real estate sector, mining, where illicit activities through cash transactions thrive. We also looked at some positive key factors that affected our vulnerability ratings. Then the first key issue was the availability of a reliable identification infrastructure. I think we agree Zimbabwe is a good civil registry department that provides reliable public information for identity documents, which include birth, dates, and marriage certificates. The central registry manages motor vehicle ownership records, our deeds, takes care of the company's information. Then we have the Department of Immigration maintaining our database for migratory data. Another positive was on the comprehensiveness of our AML laws. Zimbabwe has a strong AML legal framework which complies with international standards. The country is now compliant to 37, which is among the best across the globe. In that regard, a number of acts were amended to align with requirements, e.g. the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act, the Companies and Business Entities Act, and many others. So our next module is now on the different sectors. So first, this slide is just giving you a snapshot of our results in terms of the score, in terms of threat, vulnerability, and the overall risk, money laundering risk in each sector. So starting with the banking sector, it is a low, a medium, and overall medium risk. Among all, the car dealers as the highest with a medium-high threat, a high vulnerability, and overall risk of high. Then real estate agents, medium-high, and overall risk medium. So going on to assess the results for each sector. I've also just to give you a reminder of the risk for each sector. So the banking sector at medium. The banking sector's vulnerability was medium-high, and key weaknesses included insufficient AML supervision, use of high-risk products such as corporate banking, and involvement of high-risk customers, that is our PEPs and high-net-worth individuals. Now we'll go on to give just a snapshot of the recommendation under each sector. Enhanced supervision for the banking sector. There is need to strengthen AML supervision to ensure the supervisory team has the requisite skills and experience to ensure effective discharge of their mandate. Then implementation of the risk-based approach in supervision and monitoring to ensure resources are channeled to high-risk areas. Then strengthening transaction monitoring systems by deploying effective ICT systems to enhance ongoing transaction monitoring, identification and reporting of suspicious transactions to the FIU. This is the responsibility of banks. The next sector or the next module is on securities sector with their risk at medium low, with a vulnerability rating of medium low. And key issues there, or key findings, is the use of formal banking channels in the sector, existence of relatively low risk products, except for the Victoria Falls Exchange, which has now introduced the foreign currency bit of it, which is a medium-high vulnerability. So in terms of recommendations in the sector, there's also a need for enhancing supervision, then application of criminal sanctions, the need to apply criminal sanctions, particularly in areas involving unregulated activities such as sponsor schemes. Then in compliance improvement, continue training employees on AML obligations, implementation of risk management and compliance controls, and regularly updating and enhancing AML policies and procedures. We move on to the insurance sector. Our main findings were strong AML controls and effective supervision of the AML issues in the sector is there, including undertaking of risk-based on-site inspections and off-site monitoring and post-inspection follow-ups. Then there is increased AML knowledge attributed to intensive industry training and awareness on AML obligations. Then there is also low cash activity in the sector, premiums and contributions largely being deducted from salaries and processed through formal channels. Then we have the recommendations for the sector, which are now in two for the regulator and for the industry players. So for IPEC to have additional dedicated AML supervision resources, automate AML supervisory processes to improve efficiency of supervision, continue to provide training to industry and identification and reporting of STRs. Then for the industry, resource their AML safety compliance functions, improve transaction monitoring to enhance suspicious activity identification and reporting. The next module is on other financial institutions, which are a bit smaller than our banks and securities. And this sector covered four sectors there, which is our money transfer agencies, and bureau de change, microfinance institutions, and mobile money payment system providers. And those are the ratings in terms of vulnerability. So findings per the different sectors under financial institutions, money transfer agencies, vulnerability rating for MTS was rated medium. MTS were identified as the most vulnerable among other financial institutions due to high volumes of cross-border transactions that are processed through the sector, high preference of unregulated money value agencies such as Vahwala that facilitate illegal movement of funds across the border. And the recommendations under that sector, regulatory authorities and law enforcement agencies should develop robust controls and impose strict penalties for non-compliance. Integrity breaches were noted, and the need for enhanced commitment by senior management to AML practice was recommended. Then our bureau de change and mobile money payment service providers. The bureau de change and mobile money payment providers had vulnerability ratings of medium low. The sectors have strong entry points, and their operations are well regulated for prudential requirements by the Reserve Bank, which reduce the vulnerability to money laundering. The transaction values are low, and the clientele is mostly comprised of people who are less vulnerable to AML. In terms of recommendation, ongoing training of staff in these sectors is required to ensure any illicit transactions are identified and reported. We move on to our microfinance institutions. which were rated medium. There was low AML supervision, and the supervisors had human resources constraints. There is need to improve AML supervision of this sector, conduct AML risk assessments to facilitate the application of the risk-based approach to supervision activities of the sector. Our next module was on designated non-financial businesses and professions, and there's that 7 sectors were analyzed or assessed, including the accountants, casinos, car dealers, lawyers, real estate agents, precious stones, and trust service providers. And the vulnerability ratings are as shown. So for the accountants, the results were medium low in terms of vulnerability, mainly due to a few companies undertaking the designated activities that are prone to AML. There was limited use of cash, with most transactions being processed through the banking sector. Then the recommendations under this sector: AML compliance governance structures should be made a registration requirement for new accounting firms joining in, increase anti-money laundering knowledge among staff, resourcing of the PAB with an AML compliance resource person is required. Then the need to enforce administrative and criminal sanctions for non-compliance. Then the casinos, their risk low, medium low, and the findings in terms of vulnerability where the sector is small with only 10 players. There was also noted that there was penetration of foreign nationals that is increasing the vulnerability of the sector. In terms of recommendation, enhance the effectiveness of compliance function in institutions. Also, the need to undertake a study on AML risks posed by betting activities in Zimbabwe. I think this is a new phenomenon which has come through, and there is need to understand this area. Then we have the car dealers, which is our highest risk sector with a vulnerability rating of high. And the findings being there's lack of regulation and monitoring, high USD cash transactions being processed, unavailability of effective entry controls into the sector, since anyone can participate in this sector. Then the recommendations, develop a regulatory framework for the sector, put in place a mechanism to monitor the sector in order to reduce AML risk. We move on to our lawyers, vulnerability rating of medium high, high cash intensive when undertaking real estate business, involvement of high risk clients who are mostly high net worth individuals and politically exposed persons and businesses. Then our recommendations in the sector to enhance effective risk-based AML supervision and monitoring of the sector, the Law Society of Zimbabwe to draft sector-specific guidelines, then capacitation and training of Law Society officers on risk-based supervision and AML inspections. Now we move on to our dealers in precious stones and precious metals, which had a risk of medium-high, vulnerability medium-high, elements there pushing the risk, mainly gold smuggling noted in the sector, intensive use of cash, then involvement of high-risk clients and PEPs. Our recommendations for the sector: there is need to extend the scope of AML implementation to all entities that are involved in the sector. I think for now they're just concentrating on the big entities there, so everyone should be covered. Then players must continue to increase capacitation and resourcing of their compliance function and formulate AML CFT policies and procedures. Then AML issues should be incorporated into licensing or registration requirements by the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development when registering companies into the sector. Then there's also a need to incentivize legal gold sales to curb side marketing. The real estate sector, risk medium high, vulnerability medium high, due to high transaction values, high levels of cached activities, ineffective compliance functions in estate agents, involvement of high-risk customers, including our PEPs. We move on to the recommendation: enhance compliance function, improve effectiveness of estate agents' compliance mechanism, intensify risk-based AML monitoring and supervision of the sector, focusing more on compliance function and reporting obligations, including reporting of suspicious transactions. Urgent need to amend the Estate Agents Act and implement stiffer penalties, specifically targeting unregulated estate agents. Then enforce administrative sanctions for violations, increase AML awareness and training within the sector. Then trust and company service providers. The overall vulnerability was medium high and the risk medium high. This was mainly due to the sector's small size. The sector has strong entry points, strong legal framework, and application of due diligence on customers in line with prudential requirements is undertaken. The level of cash activity within the sector is considered low, with transactions primarily conducted through formal banking channels. Then recommendations: there is need to capacitate company registry office and commence AML risk-based supervision for the sector. Need to speed up full computerization of the deeds and companies registries and full automation of the beneficial ownership database. Company registry must enforce both administrative and criminal sanctions against TSPs and their staff for violations of AML requirements. So for the main AML assessment, those were the results. So we move on to the extra 4 risk assessments, which were also carried out, which include the environmental and natural resources crime, legal persons and legal arrangements, tax crimes, and virtual asset service providers. And their scores are as given, and the risk ratings are also as shown. Then the first one, which is the environmental and natural resources crimes, the sector's risk was rated medium high. In assessing this sector, the assessment involved 5 categories of environmental crimes, that is wildlife, forestry, fishery, waste management, and mining crimes. The high rating was mainly due to mining crimes which are prevalent in the country, illegal possession of wildlife and wildlife products, and hunting using prohibited equipment or methods was also identified. Then recommendations for the sector: EMA and parks to enforce environmental laws effectively, need to implement measures to fight corruption in the sector with a view to enhance sector integrity and accountability in the fight against environmental crimes and money laundering. Law enforcement agencies must undertake joint operations to curb crimes in the sector. Then we move on to the next risk assessment on legal persons and legal arrangements. The risk was medium, threat medium, vulnerability medium high. The overall additional vulnerability rating was based on the attractiveness of Zimbabwe as a formation or incorporation center for legal structures by non-residents. The country has 9 types of registered legal structures, and among them, the limited liability companies were considered to pose the highest exposure to money laundering risk. Also, the following predicate offenses were noted to be prevalent among legal structures in Zimbabwe, which is fraud, especially the procurement fraud, smuggling, including contravention of the Gold Proceeds Act, corruption, mainly criminal abuse of office, bribery, concealing of transaction, and tax crimes, tax evasion. Recommendations under this sector, the need for legislative amendments, needs to amend the Deeds Registry Act, the COB Act, Exchange Control Act, and the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agents Act to align with FATF requirements on beneficial ownership and foreign trusts. Then on beneficial owner, to amend beneficial ownership declaration form CR16 under the COB Act, include provision for foreign legal structures with significant or sufficient links to Zimbabwe. Registrar of companies should resource inspections and compliance departments to facilitate effective monitoring of legal structures. Monitoring and reviewing BO information for accuracy and reliability is required. Issuance of sanctions on non-compliant companies, enhance information exchange among stakeholders, facilitate inter-agency cooperation in accessing BO information. We move on to tax crimes. The overall tax crimes risk was assessed to be medium. High-risk activities that were noted include individuals and businesses underreporting income, suppressing sales, and using offshore schemes. Vulnerabilities included gaps in compliance monitoring, weak data collection, and inadequate tax laws that hinder effective administration. Then high-risk sectors that were vulnerable to tax crimes included cash-intensive business, informal sector operations, formal businesses, self-employed individuals, and offshore entities. Then the recommendations under this sector: enhanced collaboration between tax authorities, law enforcement agencies, and the FIU to detect and disrupt money laundering activities associated with tax crime. Tax authorities should consider enhancing compliance monitoring processes by expanding coverage of high-risk tax players and implementing automated risk-based selection criteria system for audits. Conduct regular compliance checks to detect discrepancies and anomalies amongst taxpayers. The last one being the vehicle assets and vehicle asset service providers. Overall, the overall assessment revealed that the VA and VASP sector has a medium-low money laundering TF and PF risk rating. The assessment identified 4 primary VASP categories operating in Zimbabwe, namely wallet providers, exchanges, initial coin offerings, and information providers. The assessment noted that potential for the sector of being abused is significant in the absence of a regulatory framework and the prevalence of peer-to-peer transactions. it was determined that non-custodial wallets pose a medium-high risk of money laundering and TF and PF, initial coin offering, and virtual assets exchanges present medium-low risk, while custodial hot wallets and information providers were considered to have low AML TF risks. Recommendations under the sector: the country should consider establishing a robust regulatory framework for fast operations, undertake training and awareness programs for supervisors, law enforcement, and the public, strengthen inter-agency cooperation in identifying and dealing with criminal cases in the sector. Implementation of these measures will go a long way in effectively combating AML, TF, PF risks within emerging virtual assets ecosystem and complying with standards. So this slide will give you the overall recommendations for the whole assessment, and key ones include enhanced implementation of the risk-based approach. So this cut across, if you are talking of sectors, there is need to enhance the implementation of the risk-based approach so that we effectively use our scarce resources. Then the need for inter-agency cooperation across the AML value chain is key. Then incorporating the findings of this NRIA into sectorial and institutional risk assessments so that everyone is aligned. So with this, that's the end of the risk assessment, but I will go on to the way forward. So our way forward, the results of the assessment assisted in producing a 5-year strategic plan for the period 2025 to 2029 that will guide the implementation of strategies and help mitigate the identified risks. We have 5 pillars of the strategy, and these are the 5 pillars: understanding of money laundering risk and policy coordination, risk-based AML supervision, transparency of corporate structures on beneficial ownership, investigations, prosecution and confiscation of illicit proceeds, leveraging on modern technology to combat money laundering. So this slide just gives more information on each pillar. The understanding of money laundering risk and policy coordination. This pillar focuses on improving the effectiveness of AML efforts through shared understanding and cooperation in combating financial crimes. Then our pillar 2, risk-based supervision, aims to ensure that financial institutions, VASP, designated businesses are effectively supervised and monitored using the risk-based approach. Then transparency of corporate structures, that is beneficial information, accurate and up-to-date information on beneficial ownership of legal persons and legal arrangements is maintained and made available to competent authorities, financial institutions and NBPs in a timely manner. Then our pillar 4, which is on investigation, prosecution, and confiscation. This pillar seeks to ensure money laundering and related financial crimes are effectively detected, investigated, prosecuted, and convicted, ensuring criminals are deprived of illicitly acquired wealth. Then the last pillar aims to promote integration of cutting-edge technology tools across the AML value chain, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain analysis, to improve the detection, investigation, and prevention of money laundering activities. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation on money laundering. Okay. We'll move on to the TF, the National Terrorism Financing Risk Assessment, which was also undertaken in 2023, and the results, just a snapshot of the results. Oh, sorry. So in terms of our Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act, terrorism financing is defined as any person who, by any means, directly or indirectly, provides or collects funds or attempts to do so with the intention that they should be used, or in the knowledge that they are to be used in whole or in part, in order to carry out a terrorist act, or by a terrorist, or by a terrorist organization commits an offense. Terrorist financing has become an issue of global concern, given the dire consequences that a country can be exposed to. So background to this, our first TF risk assessment was carried in 2015, and the second one in 2019, where our TF risk was low. But notwithstanding this, Zimbabwe has not recorded any TF activities. The country is still vulnerable to acts of terrorism and terrorist financing. So we are saying, since we don't have any cases which have been recorded, but we still need to be alert to TF financing. The main TF risk driver in the 2024 now, the results, was the transit risk, which was rated medium due to socio-economic relationships between the country and some of its neighbors with active terrorism and terrorist financing threat, which is examples of Mozambique, South Africa, Kenya, and Tanzania. So in terms of TF results, these are the results. The results of the assessment showed that the overall TF risk of the country is medium, which is the rating for the transit TF risk. The following table shows the overall results for National Terrorist Financing Assessment, with domestic TF risk being low, outgoing TF risk medium, incoming medium low, then transit. For this, maybe a rough understanding of when we are saying domestic TF risk, we are talking of funds which are being raised within Zimbabwe and being used in Zimbabwe for TF activities. And with that, we have low, we have not recorded any cases. Then outgoing TF, these are issues where we are talking about money being raised here, but being used elsewhere, maybe in Mozambique or what. So the medium low, they mainly, it's because of our underground transfer systems, which are not very clear, that elevates the risk. Then we have incoming. This is money which is coming maybe from other sources and being used here for TF activities. Why it's also medium low, it's because of the unknown transactions which are passing through our systems undetected. Then the transit risk, which is medium, which is maybe funds which are coming from South Africa, passing through us to Mozambique or to Kenya, where there are some terrorist activities happening. This is the medium. Zimbabwe's domestic TF risk was rated low. The country's low rating was due to the existence of mechanism and legal framework which deter terrorist financing. Despite fair sharing borders with Mozambique, which has elevated terrorist activities, the country has no non-terrorist financiers, sympathizers, and neither does its financial system has been abused for terrorist financing. Then outgoing and incoming TF risk were rated medium low, while transit was rated medium high. The medium and medium low TF ratings were as a result of the existence of cross-border underground mount transfer services within the southern region, smuggling of precious stones and precious metals, and weak border controls, which are a common phenomena within the region. Then recommendations under the TF risk assessment. Zimbabwe needs to continue to provide resources for financial crime investigations and enhance capacity of TF investigators to enable them to successfully investigate domestic and cross-border terrorist financing crimes. Zimbabwe must strengthen current financial inclusion efforts to speed up formalization of the economy and reduce TF vulnerability. The country should enhance effectiveness of customs and border controls by improving scanning equipment and capacitating officers to guard against terrorist financiers who might take advantage of our porous borders. Outreach and awareness programs should be extended to the informal sector through public awareness campaigns, and the dealers in precious stones and precious metals should also receive awareness programs. Okay, so to move on, we also have a TF strategy which runs from 2025 to 2029, and it has also 5 pillars. Zimbabwe identified 5 strategic pillars based on its national TF risk assessment. These pillars are aimed at preventing and disrupting domestic and international terrorism. And the 5 pillars are risk understanding and coordination, risk-based supervision, investigation, prosecution of TF proceeds, implementation of UNSR sanctions, then innovation and technology, the use of innovation and technology. So this brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Madame Clara there. Did you see how she, after she did her report, she's like, water, water. Now, can you imagine, from here, I'm going to do a whole 3 hours on radio and at Mvuram studio. And I just have to be talking and talking. Music in between. Otherwise, for a talk radio station, all you have to do is talk. And it's different from entertainment radio, because entertainment radio has like 40-second links. Talk radio, you bring out a point and you have to ride it for at least 3 minutes. Now, Madame Clara was here almost an hour, just talking, and she's like, no, I'll faint. But well done, ma'am. That was a good presentation, well detailed. And I'm sure some people have the copies and some don't. But if you do not have all the information that was let out today, it is being recorded live. So you'll be able to watch it back and get the information that is needed. To give us our closing remarks, yes, we have come to the end of our assessment report. And to give us the closing remarks, please help me welcome Mr. Oliver Chipereza, Director General of the Financial Intelligence Unit. Please, let's give him a round of applause as we welcome him to give us our closing remarks. You know the drill. You clap until they get here. Look at the smile on his face. He's like, yes, they love me.
Right, thank you, MC. I am more privileged than Ms. Clara because I'm not going to be here for an hour. But my task is a relatively simple one. Given what we have heard today from the start of the proceedings and the technical presentation that we have just heard, I just want to emphasize a few key points that we will need to take away as we move forward. So today, earlier in the morning, we had the official launch of the NRA report, for which we were privileged to have the minister with us to do the honors of launching. Then now we have just had the technical presentation from the Mrs. Water representing the National Task Force, because this risk assessment was a multi-stakeholder effort carried out by the National Task Force, with the FIU only carrying out a coordinating role. But I just want to sum up a little bit Mrs. Water's presentation in slightly, especially for the benefit of the MC who doesn't like technical terms. So I'll just try to sum it up in a minute in more or less technical terms. I know it was straightforward, but I know the MC didn't fully understand it, so I want to do it for her benefit. So the whole purpose of an NRA really, forget about what we're saying about medium, low, high. I know it was confusing for some of you, but the main purpose is simply to identify and assess which major illicit activities in the country are generating the greatest illicit financial flows going into the pockets of criminals and their associates. So this is where we're looking at the major financial crimes that generate those illicit proceeds. We saw it where we were told tax evasion, smuggling, corruption, illicit dealings in precious stone and precious metals. So those are the main activities that generate in the country illicit profits for criminals. And then the next question that we ask is, through which key areas, which are the main areas of the economy, the criminals really cleaning up their illicit proceeds? And that's again where we had Mrs. Wata pointing out some of the mostly vulnerable sectors, the real estate, car dealers, and precious stone and precious metal dealers. But what enables this vulnerability, mainly a cross-cutting issue, is the high level of informalization of our economy and the predominance of cash transactions, which make some of the transactions harder to detect. So that is what it was all about. But really, we didn't carry out a national risk assessment. It was a process that took us over a year and involved more than 80 stakeholder institutions and more than 150 officials from these institutions that participated throughout that year. We didn't carry this out for its own sake or to tick a box. Now having carried out the risk assessment, I think the question that we would always ask is what next? Again, the presentation showed us that it had quite detailed recommendations on what the different stakeholders involved in the anti-money laundering value chain need to do. I want to assure you that at the National Task Force level, as we are supported by our National Anti-Money Laundering Advisory Committee, we have a robust mechanism by which we then monitor the implementation of the 5-year strategy that we came up with, informed by that national risk assessment. So we have various subcommittees within our National Task Force that in the form of clusters, law enforcement, supervisors, and various others that really help us to monitor the implementation of those recommendations, implementation of that strategy, and we'll be carrying out annual reviews. We'll be reviewing every year to take stock, starting with towards the end of this year, to take stock of what we have achieved and what, if anything, is still falling behind, so that we continue to strengthen our AML CFT system. And we heard from the minister and from the deputy governor why strengthening our system at this particular juncture is particularly important, given the fact that it's only around the corner that as a country we are going to be assessed under the regional mutual evaluation assessments going to be conducted by the Eastern and Southern African Anti-Money Laundering Group, which is going to assess the extent to which the country complies with the FATF 40 recommendations. It has been mentioned earlier in the morning again how well as a country we have done, and we clapped hands for ourselves in terms of having an adequate legal and institutional framework, which very few countries have. I tell you, we are even ahead of the United States of America in terms of technical compliance with the 40 recommendations. They are currently sitting on 35 or 36, I think, recommendations out of 40. And whilst we are on 37, and we are actually hoping that probably before we are assessed, we should be around 39 out of 40. But what I then always emphasize then again to say, okay, after we have finished beating our chests on that, as the minister pointed out, the next round of assessment is going to focus less on assessing how nice our laws look, how well we have put some structures in place. They are going to assess to what extent are we now using those systems to effectively combat money laundering. So that's an area where I have to caution a lot of work still needs to be done. We are not yet there, and as the results of the risk assessment have laid before us, there are still areas of high risk, areas of vulnerability that we really need to tackle. So that is really the task, that ongoing task that we have as the different stakeholders gathered here, including those that are not here, that we must now carry forward to say, as we go forward, the areas of weakness have been highlighted to us. Each stakeholder must know which areas they need to attend to, and we have those mechanisms in place that I have talked about to monitor implementation on an ongoing basis. We are already in engagement with the different stakeholders, and as we will do our annual review, all the relevant stakeholders will be involved. So I thought I should just share those key points as we go forward, so that you are very much aware of the progress that we have made, but also the greater task that is on our collective shoulders as a nation to strengthen our anti-money laundering regime, ensure we arrest illicit financial flows, and in the process that aligns well with the country's developmental goals of making sure we eliminate arbitrages in our economy and we eliminate inefficiencies, so that we channel those resources that are otherwise lost into the nation's areas of greatest need. So with those few remarks, MC, I thank you. That is what I just wanted delegates to take home. Thank you so much.
I will request from Director General to prepare a nice office for me at the RBZ, because I think I qualify, guys. Yo, I qualify today. Before we hear from our next speaker, who's coming through to give us a vote of thanks, for those of you who did not manage to have something to eat during our break, there is still provision for that. So once we dismiss and close the event, you can go through and have something to eat. Please help me welcome from NAMLAC, Deputy Chairperson, Mr. A. Taruvinga, as he comes through to give us the vote of thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, soon to be FIU employee. Ladies and gentlemen, mine is a simple task. I've been requested to provide the vote of thanks, and I'll go straight into that. Let me start by acknowledging and thanking the Deputy Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honorable K.D. Mnangagwa, who was standing in for the Honorable Minister of Finance, for reserving time from his very busy schedule to grace this occasion and deliver the keynote address. I think his words of wisdom and guidance with respect to the topic for today will continue to resonate in our minds and our hearts so that we continue to work to strengthen Zimbabwe's AML CFT regime. I also wish to thank the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Dr. Mache, who gave us opening remarks in which he also encouraged us to use the National Risk Assessment Report that was launched today and its recommendations to prepare the country for the upcoming SAMLAG third round of mutual evaluations. And on behalf of stakeholders here, I think I'll say we will do our best in our respective institutions to ensure that the country does not end up in the ICRG list, or also known as the grey list. Let me also thank our chairperson of the National Anti-Money Laundering Advisory Committee, Mrs. V. Zifudzi, and the members of NAMLAC. We have got Mr. Masendu, Madam Woera, Mr. Uladi. I'm not sure if I've left any. I think those are the ones that managed to come through today. In absence, we have got Commissioner General Chinamasa, we have got Dr. Mradzikwa, and Madam Gono from Immigration, who are also members of NAMLAC. And want to thank them. They are the team that provides advisory services to the Honorable Minister of Finance in terms of anti-money laundering. So thank you, Chairperson, and your team members for being present today and for supporting this launch and for continuing to steer and guide the activities of the FIU and the National Task Force. We also want to thank the Director General of the Financial Intelligence Unit, who is also the chairperson of the National Task Force on AML, CFT, and PF, our Director General, Mr. Chiperesa, and his team, both from the FIU and from the National Task Force, for the immense work, dedication, and diligence that went into the entire National Risk Assessment process, which culminated in the National Risk Assessment Report and today's launch of that report. I'm sure they deserve another round of applause. We can all agree that the report that was presented in brief by Madam Clara here is quite extensive. It covered all the sectors. It covered all the areas that need strengthening. Not only that did it cover the risk, but it also then ultimately led to a crafting of a strategy that is going to guide us until 2029 in terms of how we combat this challenge. The national risk assessment process itself would not have been successfully completed without the support of the World Bank. The World Bank has supported Zimbabwe from our inaugural NRA in 2014 through to the second one in 2019 and the current 2024 or the 2024 National Risk Assessment. We truly cherish the enduring support and look forward to continued collaboration with the World Bank on our ongoing endeavors to strengthen Zimbabwe's fight against money laundering and related financial crimes. I cannot end my vote of thanks without acknowledging and appreciating the organizing team for this event, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. I know sometimes late into the night, putting together the necessary logistics to make this launch a success. Can we also give them a round of applause? Members of the media from the various media houses who joined us today to cover the launch. I understand there was also streaming services. We do not underestimate the important role that you play in educating, informing, and spreading awareness to the nation on issues that affect us all. I'm sure today you are going to send a loud and clear message on the need for all stakeholders to put hands on the deck and strengthen the fight against money laundering and related financial crimes. I will also not leave the podium without thanking our MC for the day, Miss Becky K, for those who don't know her. She's a presenter, I'm not sure if this is the correct term, with Capitalk 100. I'm sure we all agree that she has done a fantastic job, particularly on time. If you look on the programs, I stood exactly at 11:40. I think it's the first MC to keep time. Last but not least, I want to thank every one of you for finding time to attend and be part of this national event. Heads of institutions, senior government officials. I think during tea time I saw Secretary Masanga from the Public Service Ministry. Thank you, sir, for attending. And representatives from the public and private sectors, civil society and academia, including those that have been following the event through the live stream. The rich mix and diversity of institutions represented today underline the multi-stakeholder approach that is required to combat financial crimes. I thank you all. Siyabonga, tatenda.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was an honor and a privilege to be your MC and facilitator for today. I hope the year won't end without us meeting once again on whatever platform that may be. My name is Becky K, multimedia broadcaster. I'm with Capitalk 100.4 FM every Mondays to Thursday from 12 until 3 o'clock. So you can imagine I have to rush to go on radio right now, but thank you so much. May God continue to bless you on your future endeavors, and I hope that you meet the marks that you have set for yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.